Okay, great. We're live. Hi, everyone. This is Neil. I'm from upGrad. And today we have with us a very special guest, Michael Leander. As you all must have already known from all the emails that we have shared so far, Michael Leander is a global marketing expert. He has spoken in global marketing conferences and has, inspired more than 10,000 marketers and more than 1,000 marketing strategies globally, right, across top brands, right? And also, a very interesting thing that you guys would want to know is that Michael Leander has also given some of his time as an expert and like a speaker in upGrad's digital marketing certification program, right? We have Michael with us today. Michael, thanks a lot for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Okay. Great, Michael. Over to you. And just a quick housekeeping rule, guys. Like Michael will be sharing today's webinar, which is topic 5 critical elements to mastering your digital marketing career. And please post all of your questions in the YouTube chat, right? And we will be taking all of them in the Q&A session towards the end of this particular webinar. So over to you, Michael.
Thanks a lot, and hello to you. As it was said, my name is Michael Leander. I'm right now in my home, which is in the north of Copenhagen in the Kingdom of Denmark. And I'm forced to sit right here because it's afternoon and there are dogs and kids and all kinds of equipment going up and down outside. So I'm feeling a little bit like this is actually the second time that I don't get to sit in the comfort of my office. But anyhow, I'm so happy to be here and to share some of my experience with you. Now, maybe I should mention that my experience stems from over 20 years of experience with digital marketing, having gotten involved in digital marketing in 1995 when I was a CMO in a large IT company. And since then, I've been a CEO, CMO from the client side, and I've been a consultant and agency owner and technology owner on the other side, and literally helped hundreds of brands somehow grasp digital marketing, but always with an emphasis on creating results. Because I think that's what's lacking. And I'll talk a little bit about this when I pull up the slides. I think really, if you want to succeed in any type of marketing role in 2017 and beyond, it's not about knowing how to use Facebook or knowing how to post videos on YouTube or knowing how to Snapchat. It's really all about understanding where your customers are and how you then tap into what I like to call their mind box in order to earn preference. That preference is going to carry the potential customer, to an eventual transaction with you, and then hopefully they will repeat that transaction. And it sounds a bit easy when we look at it sort of from one skew kind of way, like how can we do Facebook? How can we do LinkedIn? How can we do online advertising? So when we look at it that way, it's pretty easy to be a digital marketer, right? Because you just gotta, you gotta know how to ride one horse at a time. That's pretty easy, right? But essentially, digital marketing is much more than that. And the very successful ones, people like upGrad because, okay, I know the guys, I love the guys, but that doesn't mean I'm biased necessarily. But I can say that they've launched a business from nothing to become quite the force in the Indian market for online learning. And they're doing a great job. And they wouldn't be doing a great job if they didn't know their digital marketing ABC, so to speak, and if they didn't know how to execute. So let me pull up the slides and share these little tips with you. And if you have questions, as it was said, please do post them. Wherever it is that you do that. I can't see that. I can only see my slides right now. So 5 critical skills for digital marketing careers. And I'll be honest with you, this was supposed to be a catchy title because really there are a lot more than 5 skills that I would say are critical. So what I've tried to do is sort of just focus on the skills that I believe are most important for the profiles that we think are attending here today. But before I get into the slides, I do want to make a little ding advertisement. If you want to follow me on Twitter, do that on @Michael Leander. And if you want to follow upGrad, I really strongly encourage you to do that on upGrad_edu. And for this particular talk, you're very welcome to engage with me as well if you use the hashtag Michael Leander. And if you're on Instagram, I'm actually trying to get more followers on Instagram. I have a competition with someone. But anyhow, if you are, you're very welcome to follow me. And of course, if you have something interesting to offer, I will follow you right back. Now, as I said, being a marketer is actually a pretty difficult job. The good news about marketing today is that it's a lot more science than art than it used to be. But still, what remains is that a marketer has to do a lot of different stuff in his or her daily career. And I think that's one of the problems why a lot of marketers and digital marketers sort of astray. They don't no longer focus on what's really necessary, because there's so many options, there's so many objectives, there's so many goals, there's so many different things that they have to relate to on every day. But one piece of bonus advice, if you will, is to always focus on the end goal. Now, the end goal may be different for you than it is for me today, and it may be different for you tomorrow than it was today. But typically, when we talk about focusing on the end goal, what we're really talking about is, like you see in the lower right-hand corner there, focus on conversions, not traffic. Focus on sales, not leads. Now, traffic is just a milestone to get to conversion. Leads are just milestones to get to sales. But what I've learned in my career is a lot of people have a tendency to start celebrating traffic. Oh, we had 10,000 visitors on our website. That doesn't mean anything in itself if you don't manage to convert that to whatever it is you want people to do. And the same goes for leads. You don't want to celebrate you got 50 leads today. You really want to celebrate how many of those leads were you able to convert to sales. So that's one little point there. The other thing that you really want to understand is the digital ecosystem that you live in. And when I say you live in it, I really don't mean you personally. I mean your market. And it's your job as a digital marketer to really find ways for you to understand how this ecosystem is going to evolve. Try to ask yourself on a regular basis, what's going to happen in my space and that will affect my audience over the next 2, 3, 4 years? Because really, you probably want to be sort of ahead of that curve. I'm not saying that's necessary to be successful, but it's a really, really good idea to understand, let's say right now, how are things going to go with artificial intelligence, for example? How are things going to pan out when it comes to augmented reality and all of this stuff? So what you see in this particular slide is probably some of the most important components of what some people refer to as the new digital ecosystem. So in India, mobile is the first screen. When people come online for the first time, it's on a mobile device. You've heard about devices connecting everything. Check out Amazon and what they're doing right now. It's very, very groundbreaking. This whole idea of human-centered design and the user experience is important. Content that we hear about all the time, commerce and advertising that is convergent, and personalization. You probably heard that a lot as well, but don't discourage. It really, really is important, but not as easy to do as some experts would have you believe. And then how the whole supply chain of things really is affecting businesses in many different industries is something you want to look into as well. So when we talk about the 5 critical skills that I've chosen to speak about today, here they are, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information about each of them. So let's start with another bonus, and I know this is meant to provoke you a little bit. So it so happens that I have quite a bit of experience working in India. In fact, I've seen the inside of an Indian business, a relatively large one, for a couple of years. I traveled to India once a month, approximately, and stayed for approximately 1 week and managed people. And what I learned there is that Indian businesses really need to look at this productivity factor, because in India, what I experience is people work an awful lot. And what's worse, they commute. for many hours sometimes, back and forth to work, between work and home. But what we know is that people, especially in creative spaces or high stress environments, they really are more productive, produce better results if they limit the amount of hours they work. So I'm a big fan of the 6-hour workday, especially for marketing related jobs. I think if you went to work knowing that you've got 6 hours and no more, you would be much more focused. And when you're focused, you have better clarity. And when you have better clarity, you make better decisions. So that's definitely something that I would encourage. Now, honestly speaking, I don't necessarily work only 6 hours per day, but I have a bit of a weird job. So some days I only work 1 hour, and other days I work literally 18 hours. It depends on where in the world I am. So the first tip is be channel and media agnostic. And I think this is really, really important. So just to put a few more words on that is that you don't want to become one of those people who are what I call channel evangelists or platform evangelists. They're the kind of people you might meet at a restaurant or at a cricket game who talks constantly about Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube or any other channel. These people don't get it. These people don't get it. Because the reality is, think about yourself, think about your family. You engage with so many different channels and platforms, online and offline, on a daily basis. Isn't that so? I think we all do. And for that reason, your job as a digital marketer really is to understand, where are my customers? And if your customers are watching billboards outdoor or out of home every single day for hours, then that's where you need to be. If your audience are on the mobile phone all day long and rarely go on a desktop or go outside their home so they don't see the out-of-home ads, then obviously you need to focus on how you can engage people on their mobile devices. This is really, really important. Be open-minded when it comes to different channels and platforms. Don't shoot anybody down because they might suggest that you do a print ad or a television ad or something like that. But there's one other thing you want to keep in mind, and that is when you combine media and platforms. If you're like most people, you're going to see your ROMI. ROMI stands for Return on Marketing Investment, multiply by a factor of X. But let's say what we know from marketers we've studied and brands we've studied is that multi-channel marketers multiply return on marketing investment by a factor of 5, 10, and 15. Now, wouldn't that be nice? But it makes a lot of sense, don't it? Because in this day and age, the opportunity to see OTS needs to increase as compared to what a good OTS was considered to be a few years ago. So really, you need to catch people with your message multiple times before they're in such state of mind that they're ready to actually dive in and try to understand your message. And these things, by the way, are things you'll learn about if you are a student of upGrad's digital marketing course. I don't make any money saying that. I say this really because I think it's a wonderful thing to get inspiration and knowledge from people who have experience. And those are the kinds of people that are teaching this particular course on upGrad's platform. Now, there are other considerations when it comes to this part, which is understand where your customers are and what they use each channel for. And in that respect, you want to remember the me time. Now, I have an impression that on Facebook, which is hugely popular all over the world, people mostly spend time on Facebook because they want to be entertained or they want to socialize with friends and family, or maybe they are in a dating process. I don't know. Most people don't go there to engage with brands and buy products. So keep that in mind, as well as understand where you need to be and why you need to be in each channel. Why do you need to be in LinkedIn? You have to be able to articulate exactly why do you need to be there in each of the different channels that you choose to go with. Obviously, understand what kind of return on marketing investment each channel can provide. And what you're probably going to find is that some channels are going to outperform in terms of hardcore metrics other channels, but then other channels may be relevant still, even if the immediate return on marketing investment is not very big, because they serve other purposes. For example, as support to some other channels. Some channels are great for customer service, for example, are not great for marketing. Then probably you need to be there as well. And obviously you need to understand exactly how you measure these things. As I said, the second tip would be return on marketing investment focus. I'd like to think that if I've had any success in my career, also when I was employed, I really think it's because I was so scared of losing my job that I always was very, very focused on generating results for my employer. And I think it's a good idea if you sort of adapt that practice as well, not to be scared to lose your job, but make sure that you add value and speak in terms of monetary values. What kind of monetary values are you actually adding to the business? And campaigns, here's a little tip as well for you that will help you generate better return on investment, which is most wanted response. So whenever you do an activity, stop up for a moment and ask yourself, are we really 100% focused on 1 or 2 or 3 most wanted responses? A most wanted response is sort of answering the questions, what do we want people to do? What do we want people to think? What do we want people to learn? How do we want people to react? And especially, that would be the call to action, the CTA. What next step do we want them to take? And keep in mind, a lot of time, the next step is not an immediate sale. So then you got to sort of plan it out. So if they're not ready to buy yet, how am I going to engage them over time? That's what we call nurturing or nudging, something you can learn about in the upGrad program. And how long do we do that? Until such time, of course, when they're ready to buy. In all of this, it goes without saying that you must understand your key metrics. And if you don't know them, you got to ask people in your company. For example, these questions: how much can we afford to pay to acquire a new customer? What is the exact amount? What is the exact amount we can pay to get a sale, a transactional sale? How much can we pay to get a qualified lead? We usually differentiate those between MQLs and SQLs. The difference is that MQLs are marketing qualified leads, so they sort of reside within the marketing department, and the marketing department keep engaging them until such time when they become SQLs, in other words, sales qualified leads that you will pass on to your good sales colleagues, who will then do their job of converting them to become customers. And of course, there are other considerations, because it really depends on what your business is about, which market you are in. But things like cost of retaining an existing customer base may be relevant, or cost of win back a customer, or cost of churn prevention, for example. But you got to figure out which metrics are relevant for you. But what I'm saying here is, as the tip, is make sure that you focus on those metrics and that you're adamant about meeting whatever objectives it is that you have. Now, I've developed this little, I don't know if we should call it a formula or methodology, but it really just emphasizes what we just spoke about. If you want more information about 8 Lira, just tweet me up at Michael Leander, or send me an email, and I'll be happy to share the methodology with you, along with some other resources, if you give me a week to respond to you. Same thing when it comes to your attribution. It's really important that you try to understand which of your different channels and platforms are really responsible for delivering good results. And the way I'd like to view this, and I encourage others to do the same, is ask yourself, what is the percentage of customers who have preference for a given channel? And then ask yourself the second question, which is what you see in the yellow to the right, is what is this channel good for? Because what I've learned over the years in both B2B, B2C, and in between, is that some channels are great for just engaging people, but you can't sell to them very well in that channel. Other channels are just amazing for doing everything. Whatever you want to do, you can do with that channel, right? So you want to be sort of focused on understanding how does each of these channels contribute, and what do the customers feel about each channel, and are each of these channels. When we think about these measurements, what I've spoken about so far really relates to the kind of old-fashioned way of measuring this, which is what we called share wallet. But not that I can go into details here. about the two other ways of measuring, but I think it's intriguing to look at what about if we measure share of heart with our potential customers and customers? Wouldn't that be interesting? Because I think if upGrad has the majority of my share, if you will, I think chances are very, very high that when I make my next purchase, I'm going to purchase with upGrad. I'm not even going to consider, right? And the other thing you want to think about related to these things is the influencer part, because influencers are playing an increasingly important role. And I think many brands, both on B2B and B2C, would do well to sort of tap into influencers and maybe start measuring the share of influence as well. Now, the third one is experimentation, and I'm a huge fan of experimentation. Sadly, what I experienced in India is that there's not a lot of experimentation going on, which I think is really sad, because I believe that failure is a huge part of success. If anybody tells you exactly what to do, how to do it, where to do it to get success, they're lying through their teeth. Business for a very long time, I couldn't tell you either. Of course, I have a head start because I have experience and I've failed many times, and I've hopefully learned from those failures. But the reality is the best way to learn digital marketing is to experiment, to fail, and then learn from those failures. To do that, your place of employment, to build an objective-driven culture of experimentation. Really what that means is that within your company, your agency, your organization, you have this type of culture where everyone knows it's okay to fail, learn from the failure, right? And one way to do that I've learned is that you simply get your management to reserve 10 to 15% of your budget and time, and then you allocate at a personal level that time for various experiments and tests, even things like A/B split testing or multivariate testing or whatever it may be. But it's very important for this to work that if you look at your own role, let's say you're a digital marketer and you're responsible for executing campaigns, that you are allocated 10% of your time and you decide, you're the boss of where you want to experiment, how you want to experiment, and when you want to do the experiment, because it really has to come from within, from you. It's not going to work if a boss person tells you how to experiment, when to experiment, and with what to experiment. But what you'll see is when you start experimenting, you might see some failures. True, that's fine, as long as you learn from them. But I guarantee you that eventually you'll see some really amazing positive result. Here's an example. I'll do this real quick. This is from the US. In the US, and he thought, this is great. Maybe if I post criminals wanted by the police on the Pinterest wall, the local community police wall, maybe then local community would start calling me to help me catch these criminals. Sounds too good to be true, but it really worked. Of course it would, because this is a small community, and you know, the sheriff's office isn't a big office, and probably it's a place where everybody knows everybody. And of course that community has interest in helping the sheriff's office catch their criminals. And that is really a true story. Another truth is from the Guadalajara province in Mexico. This is from 4 or 5 years ago when Facebook started getting really big and really popular. So a bank was wondering, how can we leverage something like social media and Facebook to tap into the younger audience, specifically for this product called Presta. Presta is a solution, I think they exist in India as well. It's like a quick loan. You loan a little bit of money, let's say $100, $200, and then you pay it back in installments with a pretty hefty interest rate, but that's how it goes. So they decided to try something new. They hooked up with an agency in Guadalajara, and what they did was this. They created a concept so that if you want to apply for a loan, you didn't have to go through the normal procedures with all the paperwork. All you had to do was get friends to vouch for you get the quick loan. So let's say Pedro, he would reach to his friends and say, hey, I need to borrow whatever, let's say $200. Can you please vouch for me? Because if 10 of you vouch for me, the bank will give me the loan. So what was really great about this, of course, was that it worked. But then a lot of criticism, probably the bank lost a lot of money on this group of people, but that's where it gets interesting, because they didn't. The reality is they tested this against normal procedure with all of the paperwork and salary slips and electricity bills and whatnot, and then tested that against the Facebook variant. And it turned out that the people who had friends endorse them to get the loan were better at paying back the loan. Got it already, didn't you? You've been thinking about how is this possible? And of course, what happened was, if Pedro missed a payment, what the bank would do to his 10 friends and say, hey, have you seen Pedro? He missed a payment. If you see him, please tell him to make his payment or contact the bank. So obviously, if a friend who endorsed somebody got that message from a bank, they would, of course, reach out to Pedro and say, hey, Pedro, what are you doing, man? You got paid to the bank because I endorsed you. So a really, really successful experiment that also gave this particular bank, what do you call this in English? Credibility, or a lot of coolness factor with the younger population. So the next tip is your approach. And approach is many things to me, but I think the first thing about approach I want to say is you have to invest the time and speak your mind. By that is, you can't create great results if you don't really dive in and really focus and really invest the time to get it right. We see solutions, and I'm sorry to say this, I don't mean to be rude, but in India, if I just browse randomly on websites, I see mistake upon mistake upon mistake upon mistake. And the worst part about that is that these are all mistakes that could have been avoided if only people dove in and really invested the time to get it right. This is not about, and that doesn't work. It really is to be objective driven that works in this business. And speak your mind, you know what that means? That means if somebody is trying to tell you how to think or what to do and how to do it, agree. You speak your mind. Because otherwise it's not your solution. Otherwise, your ideas don't come to fruition. Now, I know in India, you have a certain wonderful culture, and I've experienced that firsthand myself. Are not comfortable speaking their mind, especially when they disagree. And I think you should speak your mind if you disagree, even if the person you disagree with is your boss. And I also think that you will find that when you disagree with the boss, he might respect you even more. He may not agree, or she may not agree, but I think she will respect you even more and listen to you. And I think that's how you become a successful digital marketer. We can't do it alone. We really depend on being part of a team where everyone can speak their mind, bounce ideas off of one another, and then together create a much better result. And this really starts with having that sense of purpose. And when I talk about purpose here, I can talk about it from so many ways, but let's talk about purpose of a campaign, for example. When you invest the time, you start from purpose, not from tactics and execution. 95% of marketers today, they start in tactics. Somebody says, we need more customer, and somebody else will say, let's go on Facebook. Let's do an email campaign, or something like that. That usually doesn't generate the result people expect. What generates results is to start with your purpose. Go through the motion. I think you'll get these slides, so you can get this slide as well. Go through the motions and take the time to get it right, because it's gonna make you much more successful. And really, when it comes to strategy, you want to think about that strategy is nothing more than direction. So even if you're a junior person, or if you feel you're not sort of part of the people who should be discussing strategy, you're wrong. Everyone can contribute to strategy because, as I said, direction. It tells you how to get from A to B in a certain period of time. And then we have the other part of approach, which is to evaluate your options. I used to play backgammon, and I often lost when I was up against the really, really good players. And in my country, we had a lot of the really, really good players at that point in time. I would talk to them sometimes at tournaments and say, how come you beat me 99 out of 100 times? They would always say, it's because I notice about you, Michael, that you have a tendency to just jump to conclusions based on habit. Whereas they would really evaluate your options. They would think, okay, in this position, what are my options? There might be 4 options, a little bit like a chess player, just not as advanced as a chess player. And that's what you want to do as well. When you have certain objectives that you want to meet, you want to be sure that you make your decisions based on hard data and not a whole bunch of assumptions. And the other thing is that when you talk about the communication part, you want to really be sure that you evaluate all of the benefits carefully, because typically you can't just list 15 different benefits. You're going to have to prioritize. You're going to have to figure out which of these benefits are most powerful when we communicate. And I find that a lot of people, they don't go through the motions to really evaluate which benefits would resonate best with a given audience. And like I said before, pay attention to details. So I guess really what I'm saying with these couple of slides is that there really are no quick fixes. To be a successful digital marketer, you have to spend the time to get into the nitty-gritty, pay attention to the details, but more importantly, when you're running your campaigns or whatever it may be, you want to be sure that you're following up and monitoring, not following up with a weekly or bi-weekly report, monitoring your campaigns and your activities pretty much on a daily basis, and in some businesses, maybe on an hourly basis, if you're large, if you have a lot of activities going on, and if your conversions are really important to you. So the last tip is no surprise, I think, to you, but I genuinely mean that, and I would say this in any forum, which is to study and then apply what you learn. Let me just explain this in a few words. I happen to know quite a few so-called gurus, people who are recognized by their peers the world over as being one of the very best in their particular skill. And all of them, without exception, will say when they're asked, how did you become so good? And they would say, because I never stopped studying. Now, lazy people, they stopped studying when they got their degree. Then they feel that now they're qualified. But maybe that's true in some industries. But I actually can't think of a single industry that doesn't change. I mean, some industries change rapidly, right? Like marketing is a rapidly changing industry. Medicine is a changing industry, not as rapidly as marketing, and thank God for that. So those folks who have become very successful, they, in other words, say that studying is an integrated part of becoming successful. So what do I mean by studying and apply what you study? Let me give you an example. If you in your business have an issue, let's say with SEO, search engine optimization, there are 2 ways you can do it, or maybe 3. One is that you just call an expert and ask them to fix it. Now, maybe that's a solution if you need to do it fast. A better solution, I believe, is that you learn a little bit about SEO, try to understand why this particular problem arose, and what you can do to fix it. And then you start applying that knowledge. But maybe you apply it by contacting an expert, but then at that point in time when you contact that expert, because you already have some knowledge, he's not going to wipe the floor with you, right? He's going to understand that you also understand what he's talking about, right? And you will have a much more qualified, I think, relationship with that person. So studying, what I do is I read 2 hours per week. Unfortunately, that's all I can afford, so to speak, right now. But then when I read about a specific topic and with a specific purpose. And I really strongly encourage you to do that. Like I said before, of course, I can also encourage you to have a look at upGrad's programs, because I think they are delivering a lot of value. From people, as I said in the beginning, who do have experience, not just people with a degree, but people who's actually not only talk the talk, but also walk the walk. So that's it for me. I believe we've spent about 35 minutes, which was the allotted time for this. If you do have any questions that we can't answer now, you're very welcome to write to me at this email address, michael@michaelleander.me, or hit me up on Twitter or any of the other social media channels. So that's it for me. So back to upGrad for any questions that we may have.
Amazing. Amazing. Thanks a lot, Michael. I think one insight that I got, like, being someone who's been in the digital marketing space for some time, was the clarity with which you explained all these five critical elements, keeping it very honest and real. I think that's something that will be really beneficial. And we do have a good set of questions already. And guys, all of you, like, if you have any other questions, please feel free to enter it right now. We'll be taking them one by one, and as Michael said, if we kind of run out of time, then please feel free to reach out to us or to Michael directly, right? So going ahead with some of these questions, the first one is by Mudit, and he says, "Hi Michael, which according to you is more important or crucial in marketing? Sell versus nurture versus educate?"
That's a good question. Modit was the name, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for participating. Selling is the most important. So I think you knew that when you answered the question, asked the question. But of course, selling today is not as easy as it was back in the day, if you will. So we do need to understand how we can, first of all, attract someone to our attention, and then nurture them in smart ways. But we can never, ever forget the end goal. And the end goal for most businesses, if not for all businesses, is to sell something, right? To convince somebody or something, a business, to part with their money. So selling is the most important of the three.
Interesting. Cool. So our next question is from Karthik, and he says, "Hi Michael, how difficult will it be to shift a career from a sales background, branch manager in a bank, to a digital marketer, since most of the companies will ask for relevant work experience?"
Oh my goodness, Karthik. Karthik is your name, yes?
Karthik, yeah.
Wonderful name, wonderful name. I know a couple of Kartiks in India in banking industry, actually. You know what? I would say if you have sales background and you said banking background, I would hire you in a heartbeat. The reason for that is this: if you also have a good personality, I would prefer to have someone with your background and then train you in digital marketing. Because I think in the end, I'm going to get a more result-driven and more realistic person on the team, as opposed to somebody who came in with that digital marketing skill set, but lacked the business understanding, or doesn't have the business acumen, doesn't have the kind of advisor, consulting kind of personality, and may not be as realistic as someone who's been in a bank would be. So, but I do understand your predicament that a lot of businesses are very traditional when they hire people. They hire for skills, not for personality. I like to do it the other way around. I hire for personality and train for skills. So you have to show them that you're really dedicated to learn it, and then maybe give them some sort of guarantee that if you haven't performed within a certain period of time, they're very welcome to hang you out to dry also. Yeah. Nice question. Thanks a lot. Good luck, Karthik, with that.
Great. Okay, so the next question is by Tahir, and Tahir is asking, there are so many online institutes for digital marketing. Is it even worth doing it online, or can we just learn it by ourselves?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, there are many institutes, as you call it, who do this kind of thing. I know because I teach at some of them. In India, I only teach with upGrad, but in other countries, I do this as well. So first of all, when you look at these institutes, you really want to look at the trainers or the teachers or the professors or whatever names they have, and look at their real experience. For digital marketing, you want somebody who's really tried it themselves, not just somebody who comprehends or comprendo, as they say in other languages. And I think from what I've seen of the upGrad program, and I don't want to mention names of the competitors, but I actually know some of them very well, I'd say it seems to me that the most of the people who train in the digital marketing program on upGrad, they really are people with hands-on experience. The second part of your question is this. That goes to, the first part was, how do you then choose between all these institutes? And the second part is, why not just do it on your own? I think that would be absolutely the best solution. But then you need the discipline. And then you need to first figure out, where do you start, right? And then which steps do you need to go through? And in my experience, most people who self-study this way, they simply don't have the discipline. But maybe you're the exception who could do that. And if you could, I think you're absolutely right. There's so much content out there that is readily accessible without any fees or anything else. But if you are not that disciplined and you want somebody to guide you through the process, and you also want that certificate in the end to prove that you have gone through this program and you have obtained this knowledge, then obviously online learning is a better solution. But a great question, and thank you so much for asking that.
Amazing. Okay. So our next question is, so this is by Charan, and he's asking, how long does it really take to master digital marketing practically? So I think we have, so we have questions like this coming up a lot. So
very good, very good. Charan.
Charan,
yeah, very good name, Charan. Is that a boy or girl?
It's a girl. It's a boy.
It's okay, Charan. Right. Well, whatever you are, Charan, it's a wonderful question. I think we have to divide that into some brackets, because as you know, digital marketing is now an extremely large area. You know, it spans from the communicative side, which is how do you write copy, how do you create creative for digital, to the other more technical aspect, which now involves data, of course, but also artificial intelligence, machine learning, or deep learning, as some people would call it. So the span between the two is really, really large. So what I would do, if I wanted to master part of it, I think I would start with the communicative side, because with the communicative side comes insight about behavior, right? Consumer business buyer behavior. And start there. I think that would take a couple of years to really become someone who could then, for example, teach at one of these different schools that teach this kind of thing, right? But that's a couple of years just really getting into it and doing stuff and learning stuff and experimenting every single day. I think 10 years is, if you were to say you wanted to become somebody who is really all around, so if somebody hired you and they wanted somebody who really understands most aspects of digital, I'd say it's about 10 years, most likely. Maybe it's 8 in India because you guys are so fast. I don't know. But over here in Scandinavia, I'd say 10 years.
Awesome. Okay, so Michael, a few curveballs coming your way. Shubhra, he's asking Michael, how should marketers align store data with the digital audience as consumer behavior changes across channels so much?
Shubhra.
Yeah, Shubhra.
Shubhra. Thanks, Shubhra, for asking that question. If I understood the question right, it's a really interesting question, actually, because you talk about store data as in retail and point of sale. Is that correct?
Yes.
And if you mean how do you relate acquisitional data or purchase data at point of sale with how you can engage your customers in digital channels, if that's what you mean, there's only one way to do that, and that is to make sure that all transactions are addressable. If all transactions are sort of addressable, it means that you're able to identify exactly which individual made a given purchase. If you have an email address or a valid phone number of that customer, you will in fact be able to promote follow-up messages known as remarketing and that type of thing on various social media channels, and obviously through mobile marketing. And of course, that would be SMSs, which is a bit of a nuisance in India because of the SMS spam going on. But I'm sure your brand is strong, so probably people would pay attention. I hope that's what you meant. Let me answer the other part of what you might mean. Is that the behavior in retail on the physical space is changing as a result of the digital channels. And I think that's a very interesting space right now, because initially a lot of people just want to buy everything online. Like the people who live in the tier 1 cities, maybe even tier 2 cities in India, they might behave like that because of the big traffic issues that you have to get anywhere. Any kind of mall is going to involve a lot of traffic, right? But over time, I think it's going to be both brick and mortar and online. It's not like people say, I only shop online. Sometimes people feel it's convenient to go into the mall or wherever your shops are and engage with you there. And other times they want to do it online. But I think if you, again, watch Amazon, not that I'm the biggest fan in the world on Amazon, but if you look at what they're doing right now in the physical space, I think there's a lot of inspiration to be had from there. So I hope I somehow answered your question. Otherwise, you're very welcome to email me. Thanks for asking that question.
Amazing. Okay, so I think we have time for a couple of more questions right now. So again, so Indranil is asking, how important do you think it is to take into account the marketing and selling strategies right from the genesis of the product development phase?
Absolutely. Very intelligent. I forgot the name was?
Indranil.
Indranil.
Yes, you got it.
Indranil. Yeah, Indranil. Okay, wonderful name, Indranil. Indranil, I think it's a very intelligent question. Very intelligent question. Not that the others weren't, but this is also a very intelligent question, because I would agree with you. I think you know the answer yourself, and I'd say yes. I think it's important to build that marketing story, maybe even sometimes before you develop the product, right? Because great product development really stems from understanding a very specific need in the market, right? And if you're able to develop a story, your core messages that I described in the purpose part, if you remember that slide, I think the product is going to be much more successful. And if you think around these stories as well, how you bring it to market, how do you maintain interest over longer periods of time? How do you activate and reactivate existing users or customers, whatever you call them? I think it makes so much sense to think marketing into that phase as well. So I think, you know, I have a feeling you knew the answer beforehand, but thanks for asking it anyway.
Great. So I think, Michael, that's kind of the entire time that we've had. And we have this particular webinar. There are a few more questions floating in. Probably after the webinar, we'll share it with you. Definitely, you could, you know, answer them in detail. And also, a lot of our viewers wanted to gain access to the presentation. So I think post this, we would be sharing the video as well as the presentation with them. Like all of you viewers, thanks a lot for joining in today. And okay, so wait, I think we have one last question.
Okay.
Okay, so Mudit is asking a follow-up. Hi, Michael. Can you suggest a social media marketing experiment or example that can be adequate to address the Indian audience or a small business? So I think what Mudit is trying to ask is, can you cite any particular social media, case or situation, which could, like, where you could get certain kinds of benefits or, like, some insights for the Indian market?
That's not how I understood the question anyway. But
okay.
What I understood was to maybe give an example of an experiment that you could do in social media if you're a small business, right? That would necessitate knowing which audience we're talking about. So let me give you an example. Let's assume that you're in business to consumer. But even if you're in business to business, you could still use the same example. As an experiment, where the objective of the experiment really is to engage people, right? Just to engage them, just to see, is there anyone still living out there, or has everybody died like zombies or something, right? So what you could do is create a personality test. The reason I say that is because everyone loves these personality tests. The kind of test that says, what kind of X are you, right? And that is done very, very quickly, actually, because there's technology that can do this nowadays in a templatized way. So you create 4 personalities. The way it works on the user side is that they answer some questions, right? As you know from personality test. And after they answered, let's say 15 to 20 questions, it doesn't have to be that many, by the way, it could be 5 to 7 with multiple choice, then they get a display of a page. You probably can't, I can't see my face, so I don't know what you're seeing right now. They get to a page where it says, now we are computing what kind of personality you are. If you want us to send a report, leave your email address or your phone number or both, and your name, and maybe also your city here, right? So now you're capturing data, boom, and of course you deliver the result to them on the fly in a report, and then in that next instance, you drive them back to your social media platform or your website or your e-commerce portal or your blog or your video channel or wherever you want to do it. Now, it is an experiment. I have no idea whether it's going to work, except that's not true. I have a pretty good idea that it would work. But the big question is not, could you engage people, as we talked about before? The big question is, could you initially engage enough people to convert enough people to sale so that that activity gave you a great return on marketing investment? I would encourage you to try it. And if you try it, please do share with us so that we can learn from your experiment as well.
Amazing. Okay. And one last question. Okay. Again, I think you've answered it like so much. People are again starting to ask a lot. Okay. So Pinakin, okay, is asking, hi Michael, according to you, which is the strongest social media platform and which will be the future platform?
What was the name?
Pinakin.
What?
Pinakin. Pinakin.
Pinakin.
Yeah, P for
P for
pancake.
ball.
Yeah.
P for ball or balls.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
Pinakin. I think that your question is interesting. Thank you so much for asking it. Now, I would not talk about social media platforms too much anymore. That's the bad news. The good news is that these social media platforms are now advertising platforms. Platforms like Facebook and others are nothing more today than advertising platforms, because when you build a presence on Facebook, let's say you have 10,000 likes on a page, when you post, I don't know if you know this, but when you post on your own page where you have spent money attracting 10,000 people, for example, to your page, how many people do you actually think will see your post? A lot of people think 10,000 people will see the post, but that's not true. The average reach is 2 to 4%, right? So only 2 to 4% of all people will see that post. So what you have to do as a brand on Facebook nowadays is you have to boost these posts. In other words, advertise the post. So I think really when we look at social media, I think the trend is going to be that brands of a certain size, they're going to look at how do we bring this in so we have control, and how do we then leverage the likes of Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, etc., to drive traffic over to our home, so to speak. And I think smaller businesses are going to look for these kind of micro platforms where you're in control, right? Where you attract your audience. For example, I heard the other day from a platform called Mighty Bell. Mighty Bell is the name. We will put it in the slides. And there's a platform for all of the hair designers, right? A lot of people have joined this one company's social media platform, where it's a real social media platform where people really can engage and so on. So I think that's what's gonna happen. To summarize, social media platforms as we know them now are going to be great for customer service, very bad for generic unpaid, if you will, marketing, but great for paid marketing because audience sizes are huge, and you can target your ads very, very more precisely, for example, on Facebook in India than any of the online media in India can allow you. And then big brands are going to build these communities themselves where they have control, and smaller businesses might subscribe to some of these out-of-the-box social media platforms where they will start attracting people to that and be 100% in control. Sorry for the long answer, but thank you for the great question.
Great. Okay, so I think that's about it for now. We are kind of running short on time. Thanks a lot, Michael, again for joining us, and like hope to see you soon again. And all the best. Thanks a lot.
Likewise. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.